welcome to everyone in the room, and thank you for joining us for this call today. Darcee Caron is a AUP alum. She wanted to come to Paris as an undergraduate, but she couldn't get here until she came over for our master's program, and she earned a master's in public policy and international law from AUP in 2013, I believe, but I'm always a little hesitant on that year. So she's both an alumna and a staff member, and she today is AUP's Director of Experiential Learning. And if you know that term, you know what that means. She guides students, she and her team guide students towards career-related experience, internships, shadowing, informational interviews, all the things that students go through to gain experience, both to learn themselves about particular jobs or industries or fields, but also to make themselves better, stronger candidates ultimately for their professional life after AUP. And it's a really critical field for young adults. It's really important for students to get both the education and the experience in order to be job ready. She began as the coordinator of internships and our corporate liaison. She also works with our many corporations in Paris who offer internships for AUP students. And she, in her current role, she has developed and implemented something you'll hear more about today, which is the Global Professional Skills Program, the GPS program at AUP, which is our culminating experience for students, and it ends in a really terrific senior presentation and very prestigious award given at graduation. So literally we begin with students at the first semester and we take them all the way through graduation as part of the GPS program at AUP. She's very interested in assessment and evaluation of experiential learning, which means that every day she brings those experiences to her own world and to the benefit of AUP students. And she has a beautiful baby that we all hope will show up in this call to Darcee. And somewhere in there, she also plans to pursue a PhD. So like so many of our colleagues at AUP, Darcee is a Wonder Woman working on behalf of our global explorers. So with that, Darcee, may I ask you to take it from here?
Yes, Mary, thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction and welcome everybody. These are awesome, fun events. It's wonderful to connect with people all over the world. I think I'm certainly not the first person to share this reflection that the global pandemic has brought us closer in a lot of unexpected ways. So for example, I'd never been on a call like this with alumni and parents and friends from all over the world. And now this is my second one in a few months. So it's really cool. And thank you all for joining. So Holly, you're up with my slides. Hopefully that looks nice for everyone. And you can still kind of see me as well. And actually, I'm sorry, Holly, I'm just gonna try to also access my little notes because I've got some little notes here as well. Okay, so off we go. So this is a talk about design thinking at AUP, fueling your passions to design your future. So design thinking is an integral part of how we work with students and more alumni. And it's also sort of the hallmark of that Global Professional Skills Program that Mary was referring to. So that's where I'm focused. So Holly, can you go to the next slide and I can just explain briefly to everyone what I plan to talk about. So I'm going to share a little bit my story with everyone so that you can understand where I'm coming from. Because mine is a little bit of a wandering tale, and it's related to my goals and my current work, actually. Then I'll really briefly explain what design thinking is for anyone who doesn't know, and I will explain our unique spin on it, I guess, at AUP. And then finally, I'm going to give everybody a peek behind the curtain. So what I've done is I've extracted some actual elements of our design thinking workshops, some activities, some bits and bobs that I think would be interesting for anyone, whether you're a student or a seasoned professional. So, Holly, next slide, please. Starting with my story. So as Mary has already said, I graduated from AUP in 2013. I got my master's degree at AUP in public policy and international law. So before that, educationally, I earned a bachelor's in anthropology and philosophy. I attended law school, and I studied traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture. So that's my educational background. Professionally, I started working when I was 15. My first job was at a swimming pool store. I was the water test girl. I would test your water and tell you what you needed to do to balance your pH and all of that. From there, I worked in many restaurants. I worked as a manager of multiple retail establishments between the ages of like 18 and 22. I worked as a volunteer firefighter. I worked in public policy at a multinational organization. I worked as a product sales and marketing manager at a tech startup in France, and that led me to where I am now at AUP. So if it's not evident on the face of it, I will acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is that it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. It took me a while to discover my passion. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that very early in my life, I developed an idea about a possible career. And from the moment I developed that idea, I didn't allow myself much wiggle room at all when I would think about my future. I didn't allow myself much flexibility. I sort of locked in. I'm going to be an attorney. From age 8 until I graduated university, that was the plan. And I really didn't seriously consider anything else. So like many people, I was on the train tracks and I was steaming ahead, not thinking much and not reflecting much. So thankfully, eventually, 10 years after I initially wanted to come to AUP, I did arrive. And after I completed my degree in public policy and international law, of course, I went to work in the tech industry because that made a lot of sense, right? I of course chose, the most obvious move. Thing is I didn't do that because it made sense, right? I didn't do it because it was obvious. I did it because it interested me. Simple as that. I was interested in this tech startup, and so I applied and they hired me. So now, in my current role, in the work I do now, I have the great pleasure of being able to offer many people a simple and, in my opinion, very, very important truth. And that is that when you follow your interests, your deepest, truest interests, magic happens. It really does. So my interest drew me to AUP. My interest drew me to work in a tech startup, and my interest led me to develop an internship program for that startup, through which I hired and mentored actual AUP student interns for a few years. My interest also led me to, on a whim, sign up as a formal mentor in the AUP career mentoring program. And this is how, in a very unexpected and organic way, I found my passion. I discovered that my best days working at that startup were the days when I was working with young professionals, with the interns that I hired, supporting them towards their goals, teaching them things. Those were my best days. So when the position for the internship coordinator opened up at AUP, I applied. And so now, almost 4 years after that, I get to spend most of my time doing what I love most, which is working directly with students and supporting them towards their goals, and also developing broader programs and training other colleagues to contribute to that same objective of helping students achieve and define their goals. So I was 29 years old when I figured out my purpose in life. Better late than never, of course. But my goal through my work at AUP is to help our students get there a little more quickly than I did. We try to achieve that using this combo of experiential learning, traditional career coaching, and design thinking. So I guess before I move on to explaining what design thinking is, I just really want to underscore that, tuning into your interests, in my opinion, is the most important thing that you can do for yourself professionally. It's the most important thing that you can do as a parent for your children, is help them tune in to those interests. And so we'll come back to that. So that's my story. Moving on to what we're doing at AUP. Holly, the next slide, if you would be so kind. A quick word on what design thinking is. I'm going to make it brief though, because I realize that some of you may already know this. So what's design thinking? Design thinking is about solving problems. It's a method or a mindset that was originally developed by designers and engineers, but it's now used as a means of solving problems, or more concretely, it's about chipping away at all manner of problems. So an engineer might try to solve the problem of figuring out how to design an electric car that drives further on a single charge. And a career coach like me might help a student try to solve the problem of how to align their interests and their values with their vision for how they will spend their time at university. So this problem solving through design thinking is achieved by the cultivation and the deployment of 5 mindsets, and I've got them on the screen there, and I'll just explain them briefly. So the first is be curious. Being curious allows you to see opportunities everywhere, right? So if you think you know everything about a certain topic, and you don't ask a bunch of questions, you're probably going to miss stuff. And so the idea is that curiosity leads to asking questions and talking and consulting with people, and it opens up opportunities and it opens up doors and new avenues that you probably would have never expected. The second mindset is try stuff. This is probably one of my favorites of the list. There's this phrase that I often in our design thinking workshops, I ask our students to tell me what this phrase means. The phrase is adopt a bias to action. Adopt a bias to action. So I'm sure on this chat here, know what this means. It means that the vast majority of the time, there's very low risk in just trying something. Students and frankly, many of us seasoned pros, we get caught in what I like to refer to as hypothetical land, where we spend a lot of time thinking, and, imagining and suffering by anticipation in some cases, when probably we should just give something a try and see how it goes. So that's try stuff. The third is reframing problems. So this is a very interesting design thinking mindset. Very, very interesting, because the concept here is that if you spend too long trying to design the solution to a problem and not getting anywhere, it might be the case that you're looking at the wrong problem. So a good example from my work with students is a pretty classic case of, a student coming into my office and saying, Darcee, I'm just really interested in fashion, but my parents are insisting that I major in business. And I don't care about business. I really want to work in fashion. How do I convince my parents to let me work in fashion? And so this is a perfect moment for a problem reframe, in my opinion, because the problem isn't how to convince your parents to let you work in fashion. The problem is how to, work through your business degree and turn that into an opportunity to work in a career in fashion, because it's totally possible to work in fashion if you have a business degree. So it's a little example, but it's something that comes up all the time. So that's number 3. Number 4 is know it's a process. So things change, including your goals, and that's okay. That's sort of the idea of knowing it's a process. Circumstances change, colleagues change, opportunities come and go, and so this design thinking mindset is really about adaptability, and that's just really important in the world we live in, and I think it's a good one. It serves students well. And then the last one is ask for help. So a lot of young professionals that I work with, a lot of students, they sometimes have trouble owning their successes, because they have this very incorrect assumption that if they worked on something with a team, they somehow aren't able to take credit for that achievement. Because it wasn't something they did all by themselves. And I tell them success doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens collaboratively very often, more often than not. So the best designs are collaborative, and asking for help is really important. So that's design thinking in a nutshell. We introduce these mindsets and the concept of design thinking to all willing AUP undergraduates through a series of workshops that we offer through the Global Professional Skills Program. So now I'm going to turn my attention to those. Holly, that's for the next slide, and just briefly explain to you how we do design thinking at AUP. So like I said, there are 3 workshops, and they're targeted at different groups of students, but there's a little bit of fluidity there. And so for us at AUP, and in my opinion, design thinking is at its best, it's at its most inspiring, it's its most effective when it's paired with introspection. So the sweet spot, it happens in each of our 3 workshops. So designing your AUP is a workshop targeted at solving the problem of how to identify your true interest and values, the ones that are really yours, not the ones you think you should have, but your true interests and values, and align those with your vision and with your plans for your university experience. So you can understand how there's a little bit of introspection and then a little bit of planning. Designing Your Life is a workshop targeted at solving the problem of how to align your values with your vision for your future, how to begin preparation for life as a professional, and how to articulate a unique value proposition. And then finally, Designing Your Narrative is a workshop targeted at solving the problem of identifying a very clear professional objective and then developing a compelling and succinct personal narrative to successfully sell yourself to help you achieve that objective. So that's in a nutshell what we do in these 3 workshops. And as you can see, based on these basic explanations of what we do, students are encouraged in these workshops to very carefully consider themselves, to think about what makes them who they are, to think about what drives them, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what gets them excited, and use that introspection and self-knowledge to power their designs. That's the idea. Who am I? What do I really deeply want? And how do I use that to make decisions about where I'm headed? So this is what I meant earlier when I said magic happens when you follow your interests. I mean that in quite a broad sense, where interests isn't just what you're interested in, but it's what makes you who you are as a person. Tapping into this truest version of yourself and acknowledging that person is the most powerful tool that anyone can harness as you fuel your passions and plan your future. So the next slide, Holly, if you can just kind of slowly scroll through, I wanted to share some pictures of what the process looks like. So I love this one. It's a panoramic. This is from Designing Your Life. It's from the end of it, right near the end. And you can see the classic, you know, when people think of design thinking, they often associate design thinking with Post-it notes. So you can see this classroom is completely plastered on 3 walls with Post-it notes from the students doing work on their life design. And Holly, you can go to the next one. This one is also from a Designing Your Life workshop, but in a different semester in a different room. And I just like it because you can see how dynamic the process is. We get students standing up and writing things down, also consulting with one another and talking through their ideas. Holly, you can go to the next one, please. Oh, this one is so nice. So this is an image from a Designing Your AUP session. In this session, we have an exercise about big dreams, and we pair that with an exercise designed to tease out a person's values. It's an exercise we call the peak experience. So basically the way it works is we begin by having students stand up and articulate their big dream, their biggest, most scariest, hottest, craziest dream. They write that down, we throw it on the board, Then we do another exercise where we have them think of a peak experience, and we use that as a tool to tease out what matters most to that person, what's illustrated by what they consider to be a peak experience. And we write those things near their big dream, and almost always, as you can see, there are all these little arrows connecting things, and that's because the values that we tease out of their peak experience are generally very, very closely related to their big dreams. And it's sort of this aha moment you can imagine for a freshman student, right? Because that's who this workshop is targeted to, for them to see like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. My big dream, my values, it's, you know, it all makes sense. I have a light at the end of the tunnel. I have a direction. I have a focus. Okay, so next photo. Yeah, I think this is from a Designing Your Life workshop. So that's me and the student leadership coordinator, Safia Benyaya, there at the end of the workshop with some of the students who participated that day. I just thought it was cute. And then I think there's one more maybe. Yeah, so, oh, this one is from the Designing Your Narrative workshop. So Designing Your Narrative is targeted at senior students. And so in this picture, they're practicing answering the most common and most difficult interview question, tell me about yourself. So that's the sort of the focal point of that workshop. And what we do is we start by just throwing them into the deep end and saying, all right, guys, has anybody been asked this question before? You probably have. How did it go? Probably not great if you didn't prepare. So let's just give it a try. We give them a couple of minutes. They each take a stab at telling each other about themselves. And then we come back and have a, you know, one of those moments like, how did it go? And they're all sort of like, we're not really sure. And that's how the workshop kicks off. And everything in that workshop is designed to help them be able to confidently answer that question, to tell somebody about themselves in 3 minutes or less. So I think those are all of my pictures. So thank you, Holly. Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm just gonna move over my little notes. Yes, so we're to the part of this, I guess, talk where I wanted to share some stuff with you all. So there are actually four exercises or 4 elements from these workshops that I've pulled out and that I want to share. The first one is just a video, and so Holly is going to screen it, and hopefully that it screens well. Some of you, especially some of our more mature participants, may have seen this video before, or an extraction of it. It's a Stephen Covey. Yeah, he's pretty well known guy. So it's only 4 minutes, but I love this video and I love the concept, and I think it's something that's valuable to literally everyone, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are. So I thought it would be 4 minutes well spent today.
Your name is?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. You have a work life?
I do.
Family life as well?
Mm-hmm.
Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
I direct an international firm.
An international firm?
Mm-hmm.
So you really are interfacing with all kinds of people in the firm and outside the firm.
That's right.
You want a rich personal life and a rich family life. Do you ever feel like you get bogged down in the thick of thin things?
Yes.
Well, that might be analogous to all these little, small things that tend to fill our life. And that just little by little, they just accumulate. Now, your job, you can't go above this, is to get all those large rocks in the jar. Good luck. What's that one called?
Q2, planning, preparation.
Right. Planning, preparation, prevention, and empowerment. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next rock she's putting in there is called relationships and family. We didn't look at that third rock you put in there. That's employment, some key employment issue, and then you put major projects here. I can't get it above there.
I haven't worked it yet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. That's called service, community, church. Do you ever feel like this?
Yes.
How many feel like this? By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things. It's almost. Wow, that is good. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it. Here's something that's called urgent and important. It's a quadrant 1 thing that is blindsiding you, that it's your biggest client, that if you don't get back to that client now, you've given up your vacation.
No.
And you have no special block of time just for yourself. I'll tell you what you can do if you want to.
What's that?
You can take a whole different approach. You have a totally fresh bowl. You can work out of a different paradigm altogether.
Well, then I'd rather put these in the bottom and then pour the little pebbles on top.
Employment,
Big opportunity,
big opportunity.
important and urgent, block of time. Those young children keep looking at me. Glad my husband's not here. Now I dump these in there.
Okay? That's great.
This is a video that we share in the Designing Your AUP workshop for our freshmen. It's a video that I think really in a very clear and easy to access way helps them start thinking about the importance of prioritizing what we forevermore refer to as their big rocks. So I have students who attended Designing Your AUP 3 years ago who come into my office and I ask them, you know, how are you doing with your big rocks? And they know what I'm talking about. So in the Designing Your AUP workshop, after we watch this video, they have a worksheet and we ask them to identify at least 3 big rocks. To really think about that and commit to that. And so big rocks, as you can understand from the video, are things that propel them towards their values and towards their goals. Big rocks are not things like, you know, spending time on social media or, you know, hanging out at the bar with your friends. Those are important things perhaps in their own way, but they're not big rocks. They're not the things that you want to make sure you carve out time for to live your values, essentially, and to make sure that you, in this case, as I explained before, Designing Your AUP is about making sure that you align your values with how you spend your time at AUP, and so that you don't look back after 3 or 4 years, or in some cases only 2 for a transfer student, and regret not doing something. It's even more interesting when I catch a freshman student who's been at AUP for 2 months and I say, do you realize 2 months has already gone by? You're already halfway through your first semester. You know, so anyway, this is a really useful video. I think the message is very clear. It's very compelling, and I'm happy to report that this coming year we're gonna create our own version. So it won't be a video; it'll be the actual thing, and we will actually do the exercise in the workshops with big rocks that are a little bit more appropriate for a student. The kinds of big rocks a student should be focusing on, like academics and study time and, you know, that sort of thing. So the next element that I've extracted is also from the DYA workshop, and this will take a lot less time. Holly, I think the best way of doing this would be for you to share your screen with my example calendar and then share in the chat the link to the blank one that people can download. So Holly is going to share a version of this with all of you that you could download and print and try it out for yourselves if you like. So this is the fixed commitment calendar. So this is an exercise in designing your AUP that immediately follows the Big Rocks video and the identification of big rocks. So we pass out a printed version of this calendar. We give the students a highlighter and we say, take 5 minutes and highlight your fixed commitments. And so the most obvious ones for a student would include, you know, sleep and their classes, work if they have a job on top of their classes, study time if they're the kind of person who has pre-scheduled that into their schedule, those kinds of things. For me, this is mine, right? So sleep, my morning routine, my commute, work, my other commute, evening routine, and dinner, and then sleep again. So there's a tiny bit of white space left on mine. There's even less for some people who have weekend commitments. And so this is a very quick way of checking in with yourself, right? And to help a student check in with themselves. Because very, very quickly you can see how few little white squares are left. And that white space that's left over outside of your fixed commitments is the space and the time during which you can invest in your values and invest in your big rocks. So anyway, I just wanted to show this really quickly because I know for me, the first time I saw this was my first year at AUP when Celeste and Kevin very kindly invited me to come along for one of the Designing Your AUP workshops. And I saw this and I thought, oh my goodness, if only I had, you know, used this before. And now I actually do one every semester. So the first Designing Your AUP workshop that I do each semester, I redo my own fixed commitment calendar. And personally, on a very real and concrete level, I find it very useful for myself, just to make sure that things are calibrated appropriately. So that's the fixed commitment calendar. I've got 2 other exercises I want to share. They're both relatively short. Holly, if you can share your screen, and I think the next one is the unique value proposition slide, the first of the 2 slides. So this one is coming out of the Designing Your Life workshop. So to remind everyone, this workshop is, so it's slide 8. This workshop is designed to help students align their values with their vision for their future and to help them start thinking about their transition into the professional sphere. And so at the very end of the workshop, we've already done all kinds of exercises by the time we get to this, but at the very end, we do personal value proposition work. So a PVP, it can also be known as a unique value proposition, a UVP, and I find it useful to share both of those because they highlight different aspects of this concept. In essence, it's a succinct description of your personal strengths, the things that make you uniquely you and that make you uniquely qualified to attain your goal or your target or your objective, right? This is very high level work. It's something that is ongoing for every single one of us. I mean, all through your life, even after you retire, you still have a unique value proposition. You still have a thing that makes you uniquely valuable to the people around you. But in the professional context, there's another way I give students to sort of wrap their heads around this idea. I say, okay, if you had literally 10 seconds to tell a prospective employer something about you and convince them to hire you, what would you say? Like literally 10 seconds, no more. What would you say? What would be so important that you would choose to eat up those 10 seconds saying that thing, getting that message across? So Holly, if you can go to the next slide, I've got some examples. So the first one, I'm a Swiss Army knife. My work experience and education are extremely diverse. If you hire me, I can solve any problem. I can do practically anything and do it well except code. So that one's mine. That's mine. My actual one. So the next one, I'm a builder. I love to develop things, teams, processes, plans, strategies, you name it, I'll build it. So that's my very close colleague, Courtney Nozakowski. who has just moved from being the internship manager to the associate registrar, and she's moving over there to build us a new student information system. So her unique value proposition is very in line with like where she's headed in life and has recently served her very well. And so the last example is I make order out of chaos. I can put structure where there is none and make a well-run operation even better. So these are just 3 examples. There are lots of other ways to approach a personal value proposition. But I hope that for everyone on this call, you can easily recognize the value of being able to do this. It's kind of linked to an elevator pitch, but it's even shorter. It's even shorter. So maybe, time permitting, there will be somebody or multiple people who are joining us today who want to share theirs. I would love to hear what your personal value propositions are. So in designing your life, like I said, we do this at the very end and they just get started, right? Like in the 15 to 30 minutes of the end of this workshop, they're not gonna drill down to exactly what their value proposition is, but they get started. And then we see them later in the careers office for one-on-one appointments and other workshops, and they keep working on it. Most effectively with other students. Students give each other lots of really great advice actually on these kinds of things. So the last little element that I wanted to share, Holly, there'll be the next slide, is one that is lifted from the Designing Your Narrative workshop. So again, to remind everyone, that one is just for seniors. It's for students who are this close to kind of launching their professional project or applying to graduate school. And this is one of the tools we give them when we're helping them figure out how to craft a narrative and how to talk about themselves and sell themselves. So it's a technique for telling a well-rounded and compelling story about your work and achievements. It's an acronym. You can memorize it, which is great. It's very easy to memorize, and then you can use it on the fly. It's originally something designed for interviewing, actually, but it works really, really well in cover letters also. So it stands for situation or task, action you took, and result. So when you talk about an achievement, it's important to offer context, to say what you did, and to say something about what happened as a result of what you did. What I often tell students is that most of us, when we speak about our achievements, we go straight to the A. I did blah, blah, blah. We frequently forget to offer context, and we almost always forget to say something about the result, which is really a pity, because for your conversation partner, the result is the most exciting thing. That's the part that they want to hear more than anything else. Like, what happened, you know? What happened? So yeah, these are star stories, and I thought maybe, I mean, I don't know, I could share a quick example to make sure that this makes sense to everyone. So, and I don't ever pull the same one twice because I feel like that's not fair, because I say you can use it on the fly. So I will tell you a star story that's a long-term one. So the situation in my story was I was the internship program manager at AUP, and I was approached by the Dean of Student Development to work on a co-curricular experience program that would span, you know, the academic curriculum and what students are doing as electives. And it was something that had been on the docket for a long time, but had never gained any traction. So what did I do? I said yes. I made time for it. I met with him. I worked with other colleagues, and we started developing what eventually became the Global Professional Skills Program. I did that in spite of the fact that there was a little bit of backlash towards the program. There was a little bit of naysaying. Also, nobody gave me permission to do it necessarily. It was aligned with what my mission was at work, but at that time I didn't have a really clear supervisor, and so I kind of just made the decision to go with it because it seemed interesting and useful. So that's the action I took, is I dove in. And the result was that a couple years after we first started working on the project, it launched successfully. We ran a few successful pilots, and I was eventually offered a promotion that would put me at the helm of the development and growth of the program. So that's a simple star story. Results can be quantitative or qualitative. A result could be I earned, you know, $1 billion in my fundraiser, or a result could be, you know, I organized this event and it was so well attended and had great press reviews and was in the news. Both of those are acceptable results. So those are star stories. Holly, I think my last slide is actually about connecting. So, you know, there are a fair number of people on the call, depending on who you are and what you're up to. If you have questions for me that you'd like to address separately, you can reach me at dcaron@aup.edu. And I also will encourage you, like I encourage all of the students, to connect with me on LinkedIn. So that's that. And if anyone has questions now or wants to share their unique value proposition or a star story, you're very welcome to maybe flag that or something in the chat. I don't know, Mary, I'm gonna tap you back in here.
Great, thank you. Darcee, amazing, thank you. And I would love it if people could either raise your hand on the participant list. There's a way for you to raise your hand or lob something onto the chat bar, because I think mostly we've just been riveted to your every single word. That was just an absolutely fantastic program. I wonder if there are any parents on the call who might comment on whether or not your AUP students, I know of at least one, your AUP students have participated in the GPS program, and your feedback on it, because of course we know that parents are very interested in how we help students not only get a great education at AUP, but also get themselves ready for the world. I want to just repeat one thing you said though, because it was so amazing, Darcee. I am a Swiss Army knife. My work experience and education are extremely diverse. If you hire me, I can solve any problem or do practically anything and do it well. Does anybody have any doubt about that? So is there a parent? I know of one I'm going to call on if nobody else raises their hand, but is there a parent in the room who might be willing to tell us a little bit about your perspective on GPS? Throw yourself in the chat bar if you want. I think Donna probably has a great story to tell us.
I do. Thank you, Mary. So as many of you know, my son is a rising junior at AUP and has spent quite a bit of time in the Career Center this spring working on his resume and looking for internships and job opportunities. And he was very, very, very busy with that, trying to find a way to stay in Paris over the summer. Sadly, he was not able to find a job in Paris due to the confinement and all that good stuff. And one of the internships that he was accepted for has been delayed till September. So he is home, and but he did find an internship. He's working with a company called Studio 71. And listening to him as he's working through his internship, it's fantastic to hear the way that he holds himself and the way that he's able to contribute to the conversation and just be part of the group. He's learning a ton. Came in yesterday and said that he hates spreadsheets, which that's a win. That's good. A lot of adulting happening there. But last night at dinner we were talking, and I said, "So what did you do?" And he said, "Well, today we talked about our resumes and our online presence, and I talked about LinkedIn and kind of how we wanted to put things together and blah blah." And I said, "So was it new information?" And he was like, "Well, not really. It's what they told us it's what we talked about at the Career Center. And it's what Darcee and her team helped me with." So I was like, wow, that's so great. So good job, Darcee. I mean, really, the GPS is amazing to watch. I know as he's making plans for what he does in, his classes and his scheduling, he goes back to his roadmap and he's looking at, I need to make sure that I'm checking off these boxes, because it's important life skills that he's learning in addition to educational skills. So I think it's very valuable, and I do tell all of the parents that I come in contact with about it, because it is a special thing that AUP offers for our students. So thank you. Also, this is the second time this week I've seen the Big Rock video. I think that maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. So thank you, Darcee.
That's great. Thank you, Donna. I'm also going to pick on somebody else here, who is Jessica Newman. And Jessica is an AUP alum who has followed her passion and is creating magic literally around the world, and has recently connected with Darcee and Darcee's team on how we could make a really strong connection with with an incredible organization to an incredible institution. And so, Jessica, would you mind just saying a word or two about how you followed your path and how you see AUP as a fit?
Absolutely. Can you hear me? I
Yeah.
unmuted myself. So, I mean, AUP completely transformed me, and I was the typical AUP student, half French, half American, because of my equestrian career, lived all over the world, traveling every week. So the kind of life that nobody outside would understand. So AUP was really enlightening for me, and it's really funny you say that, because Hilary Bataille, who's valedictorian and my co-founder of Just World, from AUP, just sent me a paper where she had interviewed me for a communications class on exactly that, like the cultural integration and future, and it was really funny to read. It was from 1997. And so it's looking back at that, I think AUP really got me thinking about the world and about development, and being surrounded by so many incredibly like open-minded and knowledgeable people, and so many students from so many different countries really inspired me to start Just World, which is a humanitarian organization that focuses on educating children living in extreme poverty. And it's very important. And actually right now, with the whole BLM movement that is happening in the US, one of the things that Just World does is a leadership development program for all the kids in the equestrian world across the globe. And for those of you who don't know about the equestrian world, it's full of the most affluent and influential people around the globe in every country. And so this leadership program is so important, because my dream coming back from AUP was to be able to raise awareness and inspire them and give them the tools to be able to, when they come into power and take over companies and organizations and are in those power positions, that they will make more socially just decisions. And to me, that's so important. So everything that Darcee has been saying, this is a program that is super important to us, because especially with what's going on in the world right now, I think people are listening. And I think this is a time to really emphasize how important it is that the youth become great leaders. And so this is, I mean, this is something we want to integrate in our program.
Fabulous. Darcee, do you want to introduce us?
This is Augustine, AUP alum, 2040 something maybe. Jessica, I want to say to everyone who's listening how excited I am to be connected with Jessica and her team, because they're doing amazing things with their leadership training. And, we're, like Mary said, we're all going to connect again in the near future and see what we can learn from each other. They have one way of doing it and we have another way of doing it. And I think that there's so much potential to learn. So I'm just very excited for that.
There is, and empowering the youth to become socially responsible leaders in whatever they do, to me, is the most important thing that'll be able to change the world.
Yeah.
That's great. Mimi, may I pick on you? I'm going to unmute you.
Okay.
So tell us what you just lobbed in the comments, because it's such a great idea.
I need you, Darcee. I need you to help the rest of us, the grads, the alumni, for your program. And how would you rework that for a group such as the early classes and beyond? It's so exciting.
It's for more recent alumni, it would look different than for more mature alumni. I think a lot of the introspective exercises of these design thinking workshops, they stand alone, no matter how old you are. So when we do work on big dreams, peak experiences, there's a whole visualization, the future self visualization. These are things that are relevant, I think, no matter who you are and or nor how old you are. So we could really use those and build upon them to work with more mature alumni. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't know exactly what I would do, but I certainly recognize the potential. I mean, I'm quite excited about the idea of crafting a design thinking workshop targeted at alumni, particularly potentially more mature alumni. And that, you know, that might be in line with some of the updates coming down the pike at AUP more broadly. Who knows? But yeah, I like that idea very much. I think it would, for me, it would be a very different experience, because obviously, even for those of us who coach these workshops, the difference between working with freshmen and working with seniors is just astounding. The development that happens in 3 or 4 years is just really remarkable. Even between our freshmen and our sophomores, juniors, you know, there's a very minimal visualization we do with them in their first year, and a much more sophisticated one that we do with them in their second, third year. We tried the more sophisticated one time with the freshmen, and it was a big flop. They weren't ready, you know, and yet in a year, they're there. So when I think about transposing that onto, you know, the difference between working with current students and working with alumni who are 10, 15, 30 years out after AUP, I would be very interested to see those differences and I guess get those insights, frankly.
Fantastic, and that's a great segue. There's somebody with their hand up, and that would be Celeste. So I think we should let her ask her question or make her comment. Oh, you're muted. I'm unmuting you. I can't unmute you.
There, I muted myself. How excited I am to be listening to this whole conversation, because I am absolutely convinced that it's the wrong thing to ask students, what are you majoring in? You have to ask them first, what's your purpose in life? What were you put on this earth to do? And nobody does that better than Darcee and her team of coaches, getting these students to be able to do this stuff. But Mimi, we're going to create a school for adult global explorers called SAGE, and it's going to start next summer. And guess what? There's going to be a whole component of it called life crafting. And in the life crafting one, and we've already piloted it with parents dropping students off in September, we did a 6-hour workshop with them called Surviving the Empty Nest. And it was moving, powerful. There were tears. There was the generation of incredible imagery, while parents discovered things that had been dormant for years while they were raising children. What's it time to bring to the surface now? What dreams need to be expressed now? So that's where we're going next. You'll come to Paris next summer and be part of that. Darcee will help me with that.
So as we come to the close,
I was going to say, I don't yet know how to cope with the empty nest, thank God, but I can help with other stuff.
So as we come to the close of the hour, Darcee, I gave you a little clue on this, I think, but maybe not. We like to close the hour with something specific that you would want to leave this audience with, both for two things. What's one thing we could do for ourselves as a takeaway from this? What could we remember? And then what can we talk about on our next Zoom cocktail party? That's the way we phrase it. So one thing you want to be sure we take with us, and I know what I would say if I were you, but please.
The same thing happened last time. You had a very clear idea, and I just wasn't sure. I know the very first thing that came to my mind, and it's funny because you know, I was trying to come up with a name for this workshop, and I'm not great at naming things. My names tend to be really weird and silly, and they don't, you know, land well for programs and events and all of that. But it works really well on its own, not as the name. And that is when you follow your interests, magic happens. Yeah? Are we there? Great.
We're there.
No, really, it really, really, really does. And it's just, if there's anything you can do for yourself, for your children, for your nieces, for your nephews, for your grandchildren, empower them to tap into what they really care about. It's so important. It's possible to make a good living if you're interested in art. It's possible to make a good living if you're interested in fashion. You can also make a great living as an attorney or in the finance industry. But at the end of the day, if you don't tap into those interests, and especially if you actively work against them, that's just not the way to go. Work the magic, follow the interests.
What a perfect ending. And that was exactly what I was going to think myself, is that following your passions from age 18, from age 5, from age 95. I'd like to close with an enormous thank you to you, Darcee, and to everyone for participating in this call. And as my favorite alumna, Mimi Svensson, always encourages me to do, I would like to thank those of you who have been able to support these programs, not only by coming, but also by making a financial contribution to everything that happens at AUP. And there is no better example of what happens at AUP than Darcee Caron and the GPS program. But as you're learning through this series, magical stuff happens every day in Paris and remotely. And we would welcome your support of our AUP community, our students, our faculty, and our staff today. Thank you, Darcee, so much. Happy to have your contact information, and to be continued, I think, don't you?
Thank you.
That's it, right on 1 hour. So thank you all. We are